Welcome to Heartfulness Pearl webinars. I'm Lakshmi, your host for today's webinar, Decompression, a human-centered approach to leadership that addresses the new challenges. You're here, my friends, because we know leadership looks very different today than it did just a few short months ago. With a young generation of digital natives, a global pandemic, and many working from home, leaders are being tasked with connecting, collaborating, and engaging in new and different ways. That is why a human-centered approach to leadership has never been more important. What would decompression mean to a new leader or one with many years of leadership experience? Many leaders may already be helping their colleagues decompress, but others may not understand the tools and practices leading to decompression. In our time together, our guest will identify strategies you can use to fine-tune your leadership capabilities and provide a few tips on helping you become the empathetic, collaborative leader needed for today and tomorrow. All right, today's guest, Jim Link, is a well-recognized thought leader in human capability and the future of work. He's a sought-after commentator with the national and international press. He's a Chief Human Resources Officer for Randstad, North America, one of the world's largest HR services providers and staffing firms, where he leads a team tasked with addressing the human capital requirements of more than 125,000 employees in 15,000 customer locations. During his tenure at Randstad, he has led a progressive human resources transformation toward an inclusive culture of service, transparency, entrepreneurship, and business value creation. He has redefined performance management, instilled instantaneous feedback and reward, and established innovation as a core business competency. His teams are at the forefront of global human capital thought leadership, with particular focus on generational capabilities, leadership for the digital age, and the incorporation of AI into employee work systems. His 30-year career includes roles of increasing responsibility and complexity, while always focused on maximizing employee capability, linking employee success to business success, and building award-winning, equitable business cultures. His areas of personal expertise include board relations, talent acquisition management, executive identification and development, internal innovation, and driving rapid scalability through both organic and inorganic, often complex growth opportunities. Now, join me in welcoming Jim to the Heartfulness Pearl. Very delighted to have you with us today, Jim. How are you?
Hi, Lakshmi. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. I'm very much looking forward to sharing what little I know in this space with all of you because of the world we find ourselves in today and what the world will look like tomorrow. I think this is a great topic for your listeners.
Thank you, Jim. I mean, we are looking so much forward to this as well. Now, I'm going to, start sharing the presentation and then let you begin. Thank you.
So, hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to be with you today to talk with you about something that I'm finding is more and more important in the world in which we live today. And that is the idea of decompression. And I'm going to explain decompression to you a little bit later. But first, I thought I would share what I'm going to be talking about today so that you can tune in specifically to those areas which are of most interest to you. So first, we will be talking about this whole idea of leading and leadership and what all of you may need to realize and might actually need to do for the future related to the world of leadership, because it is changing and changing very rapidly. We'll then talk about engagement and burnout and what that means for a new leadership imperative out there. If you find yourselves as a leader or a desire wanting to be a leader in an organization, then this particular topic may be of interest to you as we move through it. We'll talk about what some of those competencies are that can help you to lead toward decompression, and then finally some very practical tips that you can enact in your own circumstances, in your own position as either an employee, a leader, or just a public servant out there wanting to do better in our society and for the good of mankind. So with that, we will begin now to proceed through the presentation and talk about these topics. You know, in the past, we've seen very traditional ideas of what leadership might look like out there in our society and in our world. And you'll see this list on the screen here, which identifies what some of those traits that those successful leaders have had in the past. Now, many of you are familiar with these things or some version of them, and I don't have an all-inclusive list here. Rather, what I have are some of the more common terms or definitions that you might see associated with leadership. And that means leadership in government service, in corporations, in companies that might be aimed more toward public good or welfare. And then finally, even in your own way of thinking, in your communities, and even in your own household, about what leadership looks like and what some of those traits are. So I've listed some of those things here for you to think about. First is confidence. Of course, leaders usually project confidence, sometimes too much confidence. The best leaders have a sense of purpose. They have a vision. They know where they're going and what they want to do, and they're capable of bringing other people with them along on that particular journey. They're often very committed to whatever it is that they're trying to do, and they can share that commitment and gather that enthusiasm and excitement for others. They're usually consistent. That consistency is a hallmark of what others identify in leaders as something of value. They're usually intuitive. They have a good sense of what's going on. And we'll talk a little bit about intuition and emotional intelligence a little bit later in the presentation. They're usually influential and have a great deal of influence, even if they don't know it. They tend to be honest. The best leaders, those that are truly authentic, mindful leaders, tend to be extremely honest and forthright in what they're trying to do and how they're trying to lead others. And then finally, in many ways, they are creative. They're thinking of new ways to inspire you and to engage you and to make you be excited about the world that they're living in or the world that they would like for you to lead and live in through the experiences and the leadership that they are showing. So those are the traditional traits that you see in successful leaders. Now, there are a lot of leaders out there who may not have those traits, some or any of them, but the most successful ones usually have some degree of those potential traits somewhere in their makeup. So if you'll think on the next slide about those leaders and what they might need to possess for the future around effectiveness and what is really changing, you'll see that there's some new things on this list that I didn't have on the other one. Matter of fact, at Randstad, we spend a lot of time looking at leaders. And the one thing I can tell you that's very, very interesting is that just in the last 2 to 3 years, and even more specifically in the last 9 months, the idea of leadership has evolved rapidly. And that rapid development has really caused us to think more and more about the more heartfelt, the more mindful approach to leadership. Let's face it, you manage and lead people differently in an environment where almost everything is virtual than you do in a world where that you might be in an area surrounded by hundreds of employees sitting in cubes. That experience is different. It feels different. And we believe that the more you think about the emotional intelligence and the empathetic side of leadership in the future, the better off you're going to be. So what are those leaders going to need for the future? Well, here's my list. First, they have to have the ability to inspire others. That's become much more difficult to do when we're all working, just like we're doing this video right now. We are doing this virtually. Matter of fact, Lakshmi is in one part of the world and I'm in a completely different part of the world as we do this today. Yet we're able to collaborate and cooperate and find mutual inspiration from each other because of the way in which we're communicating today. So that ability to inspire others is going to be there and it's going to continue in the future for successful and effective leaders. Now, we've all learned the importance of technology in the last few months, certainly as we've dealt with a global pandemic. So utilizing that technology to the good and benefit of leadership is certainly a new trait that we're seeing pop up more and more now in the world in which we live. Those leaders in the third on the list here have to continue to encourage collaboration and cooperation. Again, that takes on new meaning in the virtual world in which we're living today, but collaborative, cooperative behaviors are going to be a foundational component of what leadership looks like tomorrow. Driving innovation is certainly on the list as well. I've always believed that innovative, entrepreneurial thinkers, those who can look at the world in which they currently live today and figure out a way to be an entrepreneur in an intrapreneurial environment, are going to be the most successful for the future. They have to learn how to manage risk. Certainly, we're in a pandemic today, and that risk has changed and grown in its scale. And that impact that we're feeling upon leaders in managing those risks is certainly important. And this brings us then to the sixth one that's on the list and why we're really here today. What we're talking about is the idea of decompression. So Lakshmi, if you'll go to the next slide, you'll be able to see that what I really want to talk about today is this introduction to add decompression to that list of 5 elements that I just shared with you earlier. So let's go on to the next slide and begin to dig a little bit into what decompression actually means. Now, the way I'd like for you to think about this is as a diver. As a matter of fact, when I began to think about this term and how I could describe it, I thought of a diver out in the ocean. So let's get that picture into our minds for just a moment. A diver, if you can think of that, has on a mask. They're sustained by air that's on their shoulders. They're usually deep under the water. And what that diver is able to see through the lens in which that person is looking is only what is in the world right in front of them, only what's available through that lens. In many ways, that's how we're living today, is through that lens. We're only seeing what's right in front of us. But a leader who is aware of this idea, that's all that employees or people can see is right, what is right through that lens in front of them, has to realize that they don't have a worldview anymore. They don't know what's above them or below them. There could be sharks swimming beside them. They have no peripheral vision in this lens through which they're looking. All they can see is what is exactly in front of them. So if you think about a leader and you think about that diver, what the leader needs to help that diver learn how to do is to come to the surface, to take the world that they're in today and to decompress, to come up out of the water, to take off their mask, and to look out across the horizon, to look at the world around them, to determine what's really important, to get the long-range view, to help them understand that there's more to the world than what they're just seeing through that lens. So that is the idea of decompression, that what leaders have to do today is driven by these new employee behaviors that we're seeing and have been seeing for the last 2 to 3 years. You're myopically focused on the world in front of you. And my view is that the best leaders, those who really have the capability to connect, collaborate, and cooperate with their employees, will be able to do that through this idea of decompression. But we also know what can happen if decompression doesn't occur. If you're constantly focused on that one area, on the screen in front of you, the world in which you can only see, we believe that there is a greater, certainly an enhanced risk of engagement, burnout, and other issues that can occur if you don't decompress effectively and completely. Matter of fact, in many ways, when you think about the idea of engaging employees and engaging people to keep them excited about whatever your leadership mission might be, if they're only focused on what's immediately in front of them, then the idea of burnout can go up and up and up. Now, as we've learned through many of the crises through which we've dealt in 2020 around the world, we know that the risk of burnout is higher. Employees and people out there in work environments are certainly experiencing this, and they're sharing that and reporting that through employee communication vehicles such as surveying. But in order to keep that engagement, to limit that burnout, if we decompress and help our employees understand the idea of decompression effectively, we'll be much, much more effective at preparing that workforce for today and then getting them even more ready for what might lie ahead in the future. Now, on the next slide, what you'll see is what we really want out of our employees and the people with which we work every day is this idea of smart engagement. So if you're a leader and you're doing a really great job, you're helping employees decompress. But what you're getting is actual engagement with those employees. You're helping them to understand that you as a leader are connected to them in every way possible. You're aware of the situations in which they are living and working today. You're aware that their work may be more or less difficult. You're connecting with them as a human being. And this whole idea of smart engagement is that you're harnessing that power of the employee to connect them to the big picture goals of the organization, to connect them to their daily work, and maybe even to help them reconnect to their family, to their friends, to other people that they might have lost connection with over the years. So that idea of smart engagement coupled with decompression is the idea that what we need when we get done with all of this is a smart engagement type of practice. And that outcome is what I believe will really be effective for the future of leadership in this country. Now, what are some of the things that you need to be as a leader? What are some of the competencies, some of the traits that you need to have in order to lead toward decompression? Well, on the next slide, let's take a peek at those and begin to think about them. First, it goes without saying that the soft stuff, the heartfulness, the mindfulness, the purposefulness, well, that's the soft stuff, and it really is hard. And so you have to practice it, you have to think about it, and you have to be in such a mind frame that you're okay leading in this way. So it requires those softer skills like empathy and high levels of emotional intelligence in every interaction on a daily basis in the way that you lead others. Just think about if you're not that way right now, the world in which we live. It would be very, very difficult to be able to connect with folks virtually if you don't have some degree of emotional intelligence and understanding. And the new things that we're looking at for emotional intelligence may even be slightly different than what they were just a few short months ago, because we're having to do it through a screen in most cases, instead of doing it in a face-to-face type of interaction. So the point of this slide is to help you understand that, yes, this is the hard stuff, but it in actuality is the most important stuff that you can do as a leader. Connect on that emotional intelligent level. Now, if you don't know what level of emotional intelligence that you have, there are plenty of free ways to assess that. Just Google emotional intelligence, and you won't have to go very far down the list to find free tests and free assessments online where you can determine your degree of emotional intelligence and your ability to interact with others. On the next slide, you'll see that if indeed you are emotionally intelligent, then what you get out of that is mindful leadership. And when leaders have that high degree and high level of empathy and emotional intelligence, well, that's the quality that they have to be in the moment, to be present. I even think of it as being omnipresent with other people. You're able to connect to them in ways through a screen or in person to help them understand that you as a leader can put yourself in their shoes. There's no greater flattery that you can give to an employee or to another person with whom you might wish to influence than to be able to put yourself in their shoes, in their position, and in their situation. That requires mindfulness on your part, requires attention on your part. But again, it's a foundational element and a foundational competency that you need to have in order to develop this idea of mindful leadership for your employees. So now we've talked about what decompression is. So let's think about some ways that you can actually and specifically lead toward decompression in your workplace, in your civic organization, your community organization, in your home. It really doesn't matter. What I found is that these practices apply in almost any type of leadership position you can think of, whether that's a small one or one of massive quantity, quality, and scale. So looking at these practices and traits, let's go to the first one, which really is all about communication. Now, you've heard me refer to the types of things that you need to do to interact with folks throughout this particular presentation. But the simple act of engaging in a conversation with someone, whether that's virtually, on the phone, in the office, wherever you might find that circumstance, that act of connecting is through communication is a singly important step that you must undertake. Now, we all know that the act of communication has changed dramatically in the last years. I'll give you an example in my own home. I happen to be the father of 4 children, most of them mostly grown by now. But what's very interesting is that I learned early on that the best way to communicate with those folks, whenever it was something that was routine or of something of a routine nature, was quite simply to text them. I learned this the hard way. I got tired of yelling up the stairs or into the basement to get my children's attention whenever I needed them to do something or needed them to come upstairs or downstairs for dinner or what have you. I learned that because they were sitting in their rooms with headphones on, communicating with their friends with a device, that I had to adapt to that practice in order to be able to reach them. So whether that communication is like that in your own home, or rather it's more of the traditional type of communication that we think of in face-to-face or phone communications, the bottom line is that communication is key. And dialogue is still the best way for you to determine what is going on with someone else, to show that emotional intelligence. Dialogue is still the best way to learn. And as a leader, you should always be an active and vital learner, should always be curious. But whatever the channel, keep in mind that different generations of people communicate in different ways, and that your ability to help them decompress is dependent upon your ability to communicate with them effectively. So think about that with whom you are communicating. Apply the right level of communication, utilizing the right medium, and I'm sure that you will be able to pull this off effectively. So the first competency you have to have, well, that is communication. So the next one is all about feedback. And in today's world, particularly with our younger generation of employees and with children or with whomever you may be dealing on a day-to-day basis, feedback is a two-way street and mechanism. And the thing that's changed about it the most in the last few years has been the immediacy with which that feedback occurs. Remember in the old days, whenever you had a performance review at work, you did it once per year. You found out how good you were after something that had been going on, maybe even as recently as 12 months ago. Well, in today's ever-connected world, engagement is fluid, meaning it happens in real time right now. And particularly if you're managing or leading younger generations of employees, they will expect that immediacy in their engagement. They will want that. They will need that immediacy in order to be engaged in whatever you're trying to say or wherever you're trying to lead them or whatever you're asking them to do. Remember, it's a two-way street. And remember, those team leaders are going to remember both what you said, and they will more specifically remember if they were heard. So that builds engagement, and that's an important component of the ability for you to be able to lead into the future, is to continue to engage those individuals in the actions that they see are most important and helpful to them. On the next slide, we're going to talk about evangelizing growth and development. So now that you know that you must communicate with them and have the tools to do that, you know that you have to engage those who are following you. They will pay even more attention to you if you are talking about who they are and what they want to be in the future. This is very important in a lot of companies and organizations, and even government agencies and organizations are starting to understand that the way to reskill, upskill, and new skill people for the future is to be a person who evangelizes growth and development. So when you're having those conversations and you have an engaged person in front of you who's listening to your every word and you're listening to their every word, talk to them about their own growth. Talk to them about the things that they want to be in 1 year, in 5 years, at the end of their career. Where do they want to be and what do they want to do? And then help by providing connections to the tools and capabilities to make that happen. In this space of learning and development, so much of that is new and a lot of it is even free out there today. In our own company here at Randstad, we noticed when the COVID crisis hit that one of the very first things that happened is people went to our learning and development website to get smarter, quicker, faster, upskilled, new skilled, reskilled, technologically skilled, whatever it was. They learned and they got the capability to be better because it was provided to them by leadership. You too in your organization can direct people toward growth and development, and people are always excited and interested to talk about what they want to be tomorrow and the tomorrow after tomorrow. So again, evangelize that growth and development and make it happen for your employees or those who you are leading in your particular organizations. Another thing that I've noticed in the last couple of years is that this movement of a mindset shift around being so actively involved in something where that you're doing the same task time after time and day after day. We want you to move away from that and quit measuring the every moment and start thinking about the outcome and the purposefulness of what it is that you're trying to do. If you just spend every day typing data into your computer, then it's going to be very easy for those individuals to lose sight, to not be able to decompress and look at the bigger picture of what it is that they're actually doing. So the trick here is to connect those everyday tasks, those routine things that we all have to do, to the bigger picture. Focus on outcomes. Think about what needs to be done for the betterment of society, for the betterment of your company, your family, or your organization. And if you can connect those everyday tasks to that longer term vision and mission and purpose of your company or your organization, you'll go a long way toward establishing trust, engagement, and decompression in your organization. So to wrap up on the next slide, you'll be able to see some of the things that we believe you can do to proactively lead toward decompression. First is to help employees understand why it is that they matter. Map out workloads for those individuals so that it's balanced and fair, and make creative time to think with your team. That creative thinking, remember, was one of those tools that we saw for effective leaders. Well, that can certainly help you do that. And there are ways that you can do it. On the next slide, you'll see that technology can actually help you lead toward decompression if it's used in the right way. There are all kinds of collaboration tools out there now that are available, many of them free or low cost, and that you can put technology into the solution set to help you be a more effective leader in this space. And then finally, on the next slide, I think it's very important to reward and recognize your team or those people that you are leading. You can do this by introducing employee recognition programs. You can think about how to acknowledge and recognize good work for individuals. And a lot of times that's just the dialogue that we talked about several slides back. Just going up to someone, looking them in the eye and thanking them for their effort and their appreciation will go a long way toward helping someone decompress and helping someone really understand their value and purposefulness in your organization. So now as we wrap up, I'd like to just share just a few key takeaways for you. The first is that the world in which we're living today and the world in which we'll be living just in the months, near months ahead, is very different than the one that we have been in the not so recent past. There are new behaviors out there that require new actions from you as a leader. So I've shared what some of those actions are to help you get prepared for that. And the goal and purpose of this today is to share with you that there is an opportunity for you to be even more effective in your leadership role, in your company, your organization, or in your society. Leading toward decompression requires heartfulness and mindfulness. It requires a purposeful look and effort by you to achieve it. So now that you know what it is and you can practice that, I encourage you to do so. I've given you a few simple steps and tools and things that you can think about, including communication as a primary and first step in that process. And just think about this. As our world continues to evolve and we continue to decompress as a society and as a people and individually, the steps that we've identified and some of the practices and tools that you can do will be vitally important for your success in the future, but also the success of what it is that you wish to do or wish to lead going forward. So I want to thank you today for allowing me to share my thoughts on this important topic of decompression. It's been a fantastic experience for me to share these things with you. I hope you'll take them to heart and to mind, and please practice. You'd be surprised at how good you can become at this, and giving yourselves a very simple opportunity to just go out there and lead through decompression. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I mean, this was just absolutely awesome. Thoroughly enjoyed your presentation and all the the practice tips that you had shared with us. That was just great, insightful, and I'm sure our leaders found it meaningful too. Now, when you were saying, through many of the slides about decompression, there was one thing that kept coming up to my mind. It's about everyone's favorite, the Jedi from the Star Wars. Leaders of the future must develop emotional intelligence, including empathy and self-awareness. That kept coming up, and these softer skills were long looked down on for leaders, right? And it's great that you have brought it again to the forefront, and how heartful and mindful practices could help with those. And that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you again. And at this point, I think it's time we move on. There's tons of questions that's pouring in, and I'd like to get them all to you if you're ready, Jim.
Let's go. I love those questions.
Great. So there was one from Raghav, and he's asking, one of the weaknesses of present-day employees is connecting the dots. What aspects of leadership helps, employees connect the dots?
Yeah, that's a good question. And in our own practice, we've noticed this as well, that ability to take formally disparate ideas and put them into an understanding of something that may be completely different than what you might expect seems to be a bit of a diminishing skill set out there. So I think the best way to improve this is to demonstrate it and to show it with your employees. So if you have this skill or this capability, it's okay to coach and to mentor and to advise individuals to do just that. So if you have someone who isn't good at connecting the dots, the first thing I think you should do is to say that. I want you to connect the dots, and let me give you an example of that dot connecting. Idea, 2 dots, they should formulate to a third new idea. And that's what human ingenuity, that's what entrepreneurship, and that's what forward-thinking practices will continue to show. So acknowledge that with your employee, help them understand why it's important, then demonstrate it and live it and model it, and I guarantee you'll see improvement in that employee.
Awesome. It was a wonderful tip, actually. In-person conversations are preferred by millennials and Gen Z. Now, how does this translate in times of COVID-19? And this is a question from Anusha.
Well, I would tell Anusha that we're still trying to figure that out. The answer is all of us are evolving right now due to the pandemic and to technology and to several other societal factors that are out there. And that evolution is going to be a quick evolution because it's going to produce new terms and new ways of becoming effective, whether that's through collaboration or cooperation or entrepreneurship. I'm not quite sure, but there are going to be many new variables that we have to look at out there that will determine success for companies and governments and organizations in the future. And I will tell you, this is an evolving science right now. I'd love to be a very well-trained sociologist looking at these things in our society. So I would say to her, hang on, because we don't know the answer just yet, but keep your eyes peeled on some of that academic research that's happening out there in this space, because the professionals, the academics are actually thinking about this already. And they will, I think, begin to put theories forward that we can then test in our workplaces about what will lead toward that most effective behavior for the future.
Interesting, Jim. Thank you. Now, this is a question from Leslie, and she's from USA. We spoke about, simple tools being helpful. Is it in regard to technology, or does it apply to a wider scope?
Oh, I think it's a much wider scope than just tech. Tech to me is an enabler to a greater good. So technology then becomes just one means, one of many means by which you can prepare for the future and communicate or decompress or whatever it is the need that you might have. So think of technology as just one tool in your toolbox that you may need to bring out to fix whatever problem it is that you diagnose.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now, from your experience, what kind of recognition and reward are appreciated by employees? And this is a question from David, UK.
Well, David in UK, the answer is that varies very much by who you are, what age you are, and where you live in the world. Recognition and reward is still a bit of a try it and see approach. What I mean by that is those very large recognition programs that companies used to put into place in their organizations generally failed. And they generally failed because the moment that someone was recognized, that meant that everyone else was not. So those are starting to go out of fashion in organizations. And what's becoming more fashionable is a very individualized approach to recognition and reward. For example, even on my own team, I have some people who all they want is for me to acknowledge them, either verbally or through email or texting, just to say, thank you I thought you did a great job on project X, right? For some people, that's all they need is that recognition, that acknowledgement that I knew as a leader that they did a great job. There are others for whom that doesn't work at all. They'd much rather have a trophy, or they'd much rather have a bonus, a spot bonus, or they much rather have a gift card so they can take their spouse to dinner because of all the work that they did. They didn't get to cook, a dinner or join their spouse for some event. So I think that the most savvy leaders, those who are the most emotionally and intellectually connected with their employees, know what drives each one of them around reward and recognition, and then can execute against that.
Great answer, Jim. I mean, knowing the pulse of the employees, right? And as you say, the emotional intelligence that would come in handy for leaders at these times.
Absolutely.
Great. Yeah. Now, although work from home may have offered a break from the commute, office structure, and regular daily routine for the past few months, I find myself working all the time. I'm at a point where I need the mental break from work as well as technology. What should I do? And this is a question from Priya.
Yeah, Priya, if you're one of those people who's driven by schedule and routine and even a sense of the old normal, if you're one of those folks who's driven by that, then you have to adapt your practices within that routine. So for my own self, I schedule downtime. Mm-hmm. And for me, it can only be 15 or 30 minutes in any given day, right? And for some people, it might be more or less or what have you. But it has to be purposeful. And it has to be into your routine. So if you live meeting to meeting to meeting, then you have to think about that time to decompress as a meeting. And you put it on the calendar and you stick to it. You don't look at your phone. You don't look at your laptop. You don't connect in the ways that you normally would during work. So I find for me that it sometimes is working a simple puzzle, a Sudoku puzzle, for example. In that 15 minutes, I'll just walk away from wherever I was seated doing a task, and I will go somewhere comfortable, and I will sit there for 50 minutes and just give myself that break that I need. So the key to success in this space is to make it fit within whom you are. You can't change your DNA, right? So then you have to adapt your own practices to give yourself that break that you might need. And that's at least how I do it. And I think many busy people who think of themselves as needing to be busy every moment of every day, schedule yourself to be unbusy and you'll find that it might work.
Yeah, get it into your schedule. And sometimes taking a little meditation break also helps, right?
Exactly. Yeah, whatever brings you peace.
That's right.
Is the key there.
Yeah. Great answer, Jim. Now here I found another question from Nathan I thought was interesting. If after some thought you decide not to take action on feedback, is it a good idea to talk about that to the individual or the group? What's your thought on this?
Yeah, I think it would depend on that action, right? On what it particularly was. Um, yeah, I think as a leader, if someone gave me feedback, either positive or constructive, and I didn't somehow address that, I would feel that I was remiss
Hmm.
in not addressing that particular feedback that I had received. If it were the other way around, and I was a leader giving feedback to an employee, I would expect to see that feedback addressed. And if that wasn't, then I would want to understand why. And there could be a perfectly good reason why, right? But I would want to just acknowledge it. I think the simple act of acknowledgement, whether it's positive or constructive in these types of situations, is absolutely in many, if not all cases, the best way to go. And I also think that helps to bring closure with us as individuals. So that sense of closure is also very, very important for what I call peace of heart and peace of mind.
Great. Now, I am a fairly compassionate and empathetic person, but I do not always express myself very well in conversation. Now, I find it easier to write my thoughts down. Is that a way for me to be as effective with the written word as a person who's having a conversation would be?
In many cases, it certainly can be. Again, it depends upon the intended recipient of that communication as well. But I think there's actually a more interesting point in this question. That simple act of writing it down is probably helping that leader decompress.
Right.
And I love that idea. Actually, I hadn't thought about it until this question popped up just now. The whole idea of figuring out a way to communicate your response is an act of decompression for you as the leader. So that's a mistake that many of us in these leadership roles make, is don't forget that you are going to be modeling the behavior that you expect to see in other individuals. And remember, everyone's looking up at you if you're the leader, whether you realize it or not. So whether you choose to communicate verbally or to write it down or to in some other way process it, that's okay. And I encourage it as long as you complete the task. Right?
That's right. And I think it's wonderful for all of us to hear it because there's always different kinds of people, right? And in fact, this is a question from Harshida, and I forgot, I didn't complete the question. The second part of the question that she's asking is, should I explain to my team why I communicate that way? The written
Yeah,
part.
I think, yes, I think so. First of all, you're showing, by communicating that, you're showing your own vulnerability as a human. You are showing that you feel the need to express, to continue to drive their engagement or to respond to them in some way. And I think the fact that you take the time as a leader to explain that communication mechanism is brilliant.
Right.
I would be all over that. And I think it also shows a high degree of emotional intelligence that this questioner is even thinking about how this. Clearly, the questioner here wants to be impactful. That's a high degree of emotional intelligence, an indicator, and they are finding avenues to do just that. So go for it. Absolutely. That's share whatever you can. It shows that it humanizes you, it makes you vulnerable, and it also endears you to them because they realize that you are just that. You're human and vulnerable.
That's a beautiful answer for Harshida, Jim. Thank you. Now, do you suggest tools like meditation, guided relaxation techniques, and hatha yoga practices to decompress? And then the questioner also asks, there are so many aspects of our life that have an effect on our ability to focus and relate to others, like diet, sleep, exercise, and others. Now, how can we offer guidance around these issues? Is it cost effective to offer workshops or ongoing programs like these during these times? This is a question from Cecilia Thompson.
Okay. Well, Ms. Thompson, I would tell you absolutely. I call it mindfulness for a reason because however you need to become aware is what you should use. For some people, it's relaxation therapies and techniques. For others, it's meditation. For others, it's quiet time, whatever that is. There are many tools in that area that which you can utilize to be effective for you personally. And I encourage you to experiment until you find the one that's right for you. For example, meditation is much better for me than yoga. That's just me, right? Just me personally. I'd much better get to that calm place where I'm relaxed, and that just works for me. For others, it may not work as well. But so find your sweet spot there. Experiment to find that sweet spot, and then deploy it often to help you get there. The last part of the question about should these types of practices be pushed and available out there to be made more aware of, the answer is yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And there is an ROI on those that your more technically and mathematically advanced colleagues can help you build that ROI with whether that's through better effective leadership, through better physical health, through better engagement scores with your employees. There's all kinds of ROI variables that are in place there when you think about the effective use of relaxation and mindfulness techniques on a business or an organization.
Great. And some of these practices, for example, heartfulness, we have been offering, meditation and relaxation for corporate organizations as well through a program called C Connect, and they're completely free of cost. So I just wanted to, share that with Cecilia, because the question was also about cost effectiveness of, doing these programs for the employees. So there you go.
Oh, absolutely. And I find that these offerings that are available out there bring so much value to those employees and those companies who choose to deploy them. And I actually at Ronstadt been surprised at the number of people who have never heard about these things. Once they learn about them, get excited about them, and then find real value from deploying them. So if you're listening to this and you haven't thought about that for yourself first, for your company or your organization, now's the time to do that.
That's right. And I also, again, just wanted to quickly add that if she was interested in the C Connect programs, they can always reach out to us at pearl@heartfulness.org, and we always get you connected with the right team. Now, the next question is from Emil, and he's asking, how do I decompress if I'm so frustrated by an employee's behavior? I know my empathy and compassion is out the window.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's first of all, you have to bring resolution to that. What's causing you anger or making you be upset? So that's the first step, is to get to the root cause of the problem, to understand. And only then, once you understand the root cause, can you begin to come up, right, to decompress out of that particular situation. So get to the root cause of what that anger is and address that. And once that's addressed, then you can practice any of the techniques that we've talked about today, or any of the ones that you could be learning about from Lakshmi's organization or others that address this particular type of ways to get to a better place. I think I'll leave it like that.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Now, this question, I don't know who it is from, but the question is, could you share some employee engagement ideas to connect your team through COVID-19, the remote working culture?
Yeah. I've seen all kinds of interesting things out there. Halloween just recently passed in the US. So that was, people showed up in costume. But, engaging somehow virtually through trivia, through hats, through anything that involves visualization in the world in which we live today,
Right.
is a good thing to do. I think the most engaging thing I've seen, however, is when, normally we all have a very vast separation between work and home. And we all know that is no longer the case. I'm only in my office today simply because I don't have internet, Wi-Fi, and cable TV at my own home because of a storm, right? Or I would be doing this from my own desk at home. But The thing that's most engaging, and this surprised me, has been when people have shown their humanness in those situations. That means a child may come and join you on the presentation or stand behind you or beside you. When a dog or a cat suddenly barks or the cat walks across the screen, we all realize at those moments that we are in a new world. And that connectivity has actually driven engagement when people show them their real selves in the world in which we're living today. And the fact that they're still able to work and connect in those environments is still a bit of an alien concept to many workers out there. So the most engaging things I've seen are when people show their humanness, their real selves. And that's often involves what I think of as kids and puppy dogs, right? That's just kind of, it's that connectivity. For example, there's a member of my team who it's just off the screen whenever I talk with him, but he has birds in his house. He actually breeds them.
Right.
You can hear them chirping throughout the presentation, and it somehow is peaceful. It brings peace. And I would never have experienced that or known that had we not been in the world that we were in today.
That's right.
And that shows me his humanness and his kindness as someone who's taking care of another living creature. So those types of engaging things, they're sometimes unintentional, but they're, as long as they're permissible and even encouraged in your organization, that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah. And it's beautiful, Jim, what you shared. I really like that, actually. Talking about humanness. And this was one question that I wanted to ask you. The person wants to be anonymous. I'm afraid to hire a transgender person because I do not know how to deal with issues like bathroom facilities and the potential judgment of other employees. Do you have any suggestions?
First of all, the fact that that person is transgender should not play into your hiring decision. You should hire the most qualified person for that role. Now, if that most qualified person happens to be transgender, now you realize I had to say that because I work in human resources, right? So that was going to be the speech. You know, I believe that the first line of approach there should be to, first of all, educate yourself about people who are transgender. So get smart about that yourself. And then when it is and if it is right, talk to that person about the best way to approach that in the workplace. I think having their involvement in the final mechanism and determination about how that person might react is the absolute best thing to do. And that also will build engagement with that potential transgender employee because they know that they're part of the solution instead of being labeled as something that's different or a problem or not acceptable or any other terrible thing that they could be labeled. So I find that make yourself smart, be a curious learner, approach it in the right empathetic way with that potential individual, and then collectively solve whatever problem might exist as a result of that hire.
Yeah, beautiful, Jim. Thank you so much. I mean, it was a very heartfelt answer, and you know, throughout your presentation and all the answers that you had, shared with us today, it resonated with us. So thank you so much. Very insightful webinar and a great Q&A session. And you had patiently taken, so many questions for us. There's still some questions that we haven't got to yet. Probably we will get to them offline. And with that, I think it's time we move on to our short meditation session. So viewers, I just request you to put your cell phones away, or if you're watching us through the cell phones, just keep them there. Just what you need to do now is completely, sit back, relax, and follow my simple instructions. Now, this will last for about 5 minutes or so. Heartfulness is a simple, heart-based meditation practice that's been offered free of charge for anyone interested. And these heartful practices not just makes us a good leader, but a great human, as Jim was sharing throughout his presentation and the Q&A session, transforming us for today and tomorrow. Now, we're present in 130 countries, and we extend the meditation to communities, individual homes, corporations, and different government organizations as well. Like I said, if you'd like to learn more about the heartfulness meditation, do get in touch with us. Visit our website, heartfulness.org. You can also shoot an email to pearl@heartfulness.org. Now, that little introduction, I would just begin my meditation now. So sit comfortably and close your eyes. Now let's begin with the toes. Wiggle your toes and feel them relax. Relax your ankles and feet. Feel the energy from the Mother Earth entering your legs, through your ankles, moving upwards, relaxing the calf muscles, the knees, thighs, and hips. Now feel how both your legs are completely relaxed. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And relax. Relax your hips, stomach, and waist. Breathe in, breathe out, and relax. Now feel this energy in your back. From the top to the bottom, your entire back is relaxed. Breathe in, breathe out, and relax. Now relax your chest and shoulders. Feel your shoulders simply melting away. Now let the energy flow into your arms, relaxing the upper arms, the lower arms, hands, all the way to the tip of the fingers. Now feel how both your arms are completely relaxed. Now relax the neck muscles. The energy is moving up your face, relaxing the jaws, mouth, nose, cheeks, earlobes, eyes, forehead, all the way to the top of the head. Now feel how your whole body is completely relaxed. Now gently draw your attention to the heart. Imagine the source of light that's already illuminating your heart is pulling and attracting your attention inwards. If you have distracting thoughts, gently brush them aside and treat them as passing clouds. You may gently bring your attention back to the light in the heart. Stay still and quiet and absorbed in this light until you hear a prompt to finish. That's all. You may gently open your eyes if you're ready. This was just a short experiential session of the Heartfulness relaxation and meditation. Well, that's all the time we have in our webinars, though. But if you feel like, learning or practicing meditation, you can always visit our YouTube channel. Just type in Heartfulness guided meditation, and then you'll have a little guided experience through a video as well. Now, coming back to this webinar, it was such a beautiful session listening to you, Jim. Very much enjoyed, very meaningful. And on behalf of Heartfulness, we really thank you for doing this amidst, the storm that you mentioned earlier on and your busy schedule as well. Any closing remarks?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about something that's near and dear to me, which is decompression. I think it's very important for the future, and I'm so proud of your organization and all that you're doing to help us all decompress. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. We all do what we can, right? Thank you. Now have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone, and see you all next month. Take care. Bye for now.